Thank you all for joining me in the afternoon, I guess, of your time. It's 8:30 in the morning here in Kyoto, and we're just starting the day. I am actually okay. Two things. One is I think in the email that Andrea sent everybody, it still says that I'm a doctoral student at the University of Haifa. Well, that's no longer correct because I received my PhD about a week ago. So I'm now a doctoral.
Congratulations.
But I'm hoping to continue as a postdoc at the University of Haifa, and that's probably going to happen. And another very happy news for me that happened, I participated a week ago at a 3-day conference at the Doshisha University, which is one of the oldest universities in Japan and in Kyoto. And it was a conference organized by the Asia and Pacific Network of Holistic Education. And I presented my current research. I did an experiential workshop, and actually what I'm going to do in the next hour is the same as what I did at the conference. And the organizer of the conference, Yoshihara Kanagawa, invited me to come as a visiting scholar to the university next year. So they can arrange a 1-year visa for me and the whole thing. So I'm very excited about that. Even though I only finished my thesis or completed the whole process a week or 10 days ago, I don't remember, I actually started my follow-up research, well, more of an educational project than a research, almost a year ago. And I think when I presented my work here with you about a year ago, I was already starting to do the follow-up project, which I called, I don't know if at the time I had the name, but now I call it the experience of being. And it is based on one of the main findings of my PhD research. So my PhD research was interviews with 32 spiritual masters or exemplars of different traditions and different cultures about not their peak spiritual experiences, but their ongoing spiritual state. And one of the findings from analyzing those interviews was that they are all established in and grounded in aspects of experience that are unchanging and ever present. And depending, I guess, on their tradition, their culture, their psychological makeup, some refer to it more as a sense of knowing or awareness or consciousness, some more as an affective or emotional aspect, such as joy or love or a sense of sacredness. Some spoke about or put the emphasis more on the embodied sense of energy, boundarylessness, and some spoke more about the relationship with everything. So a sense of a connection with the cosmos, the world, the environment, other people, as an ongoing, unchanging, stable foundation or context of all their experiences. And that meant, and I verified that with most of them, is that they remained grounded in those aspects of experience that are unchanging, even when they went through quite dramatic, difficult times. Could be a life-threatening disease, a painful breakup of the relationship, an episode of clinical depression. So it's very striking that no matter what life threw at them, and they went through the ups and downs of life just like you and me and everybody else, the sense of being grounded in something that is unchanging was untouched by that. And so I think that we can conclude that people who are established and grounded in something which is stable, constant, unchanging, ever present, tend to be more like spiritual exemplars. In other words, can meet life challenges in a much more stable, grounded, sane way than those of us who are thrown around by circumstances and changing conditions, inner and outer. So having realized that, I decided that I was going to start a follow-up project of continuing to interview spiritual masters and long-term practitioners of different traditions and cultures about aspects of their experience which they feel are ever present, constant, and stable. And I wanted to do that in different cultures and different traditions. And the main product that is going to come out of this project is courses for definitely university students of education, philosophy, theology, social work, medical and paramedical professions, people whose state of being has an effect, a significant or maybe crucial effect on other people. And therefore, it's really important that they are, as much as they are capable, grounded in something which is not affected by circumstances. So I'm interviewing spiritual masters and practitioners in different cultures. I just spent 5 weeks in India interviewing gurus and swamis and sadhus about those aspects of experience, and now I'm doing that in Japan. And it's a very unusual kind of interview because rather than ask them questions, I read out to them statements that I had heard from in previous interviews that I did. And I asked them to respond to each statement according to their own experience. You know, they can say anything from, this has nothing to do with my experience. So for example, a statement would be, I feel guided in my life. So I read to the interviewees a statement, I feel guided in my life, and invite them to respond to that statement in a way that, you know, they can say, this has nothing to do with my experience, or yes, I resonate with this statement. I would like to express it in my own words. Or now that I'm looking at it, I realize, yes, I do feel guided in my life. I never thought about it. Let me try to give it language. So that's what usually happens in these interviews. I interviewed 80 people so far, most of them, about 50 of them in the West, Israel and Europe and the United States, and then 20 in India, 22, and now I'm probably going to end up with something like 15 people in Japan. And what I would like to do with all of you is read out to you a few statements do you all have the worksheet that Andrea sent? I can, I guess I can send it in the chat. Or does anybody not have it? No. Yes. No. Okay. So I suggest that you, I will read to you 4 statements and give you a few minutes to reflect on your experience and write down your response to each of the statements. And then we will talk a little bit about it. And how much time do we have for this meeting?
I have an hour total, so we finish in 45 minutes from now.
An hour in total,
So about 45 more minutes.
45 more minutes. Okay. So we will not have time to discuss the statements because I want to show you also a few video clips from interviews. And for each video clip, I would ask you to write down, did I learn anything new about my own experience from listening to this spiritual teacher? I think I did something quite similar a year ago, but it's slightly from a different angle now. Okay, so let's start with the 4 statements, and because we don't have that much time, let's say about 2 minutes or so for each of the statements. All right. So statement 1, there is something constant, stable, and ever present in my experience. Okay. I know it's very short. Sorry about that. If we had more time, if we were at a university course, I would ask you to interview each other on your response to the statement. And then we would have a group exploration of different responses, but we don't have the time for that. So the statement 1, I am more than this body, personality, and biography. Okay. These are just we're just brushing over these statements, but you can imagine that and you will see that in the interviews, I can follow up on each of these statements with more deepening questions. The third statement is, I'm aware that I existed before I was born and will continue after I pass away. And sorry for interrupting. And the fourth one is, there is something I know without any doubt, without even the possibility of doubt. So I wish we had more time to explore. I'm very curious to know some of your responses and discuss them, but I'd like to move on to the next part of the meeting, which is I'm going to show you 6 or 7 short clips from interviews that I did with people of different traditions and cultures about some of the statements that you just wrote your response to. And you have the names of them, and I would ask you to write down for each of them, did I learn anything new about my own experience? Or in other words, did this person's response shed light on my own experience from a new perspective or a new angle? And then we'll hopefully have like between 10 and 20 minutes to explore your experience throughout the whole process. I want to make one change in the sheet, the worksheet that you have. The first person is David Spangler. But I think it's more appropriate because I interviewed a Zen master here just like 3 days ago, and I'd like to show you. So his name is Isho Fujita. So if you replace the name David with Fujita-san, and I will show you just a couple of minutes from the interview I had with him in which he responded to the first statement. So this was the very beginning of the interview. Let me see. So this is his response to the first statement. So I will read to you statements that I heard from other spiritual teachers, and you respond if it resonates or correlates with your experience or not. Okay? There is something stable, constant, and ever present in my experience. Is there something?
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to describe what you mentioned, using someone else's descriptions, something stable, ever present, and so on.
How would you describe? How would you express it in your own words?
It's not has nothing to do with contents of my experience.
Okay.
I experience many things, right?
Of course.
But something ever present or constant is contents is changing moment by moment, but something the sense of it's very difficult because it's
very difficult.
It's something beneath or beyond or behind all those contents of experience. So sometimes I describe it as a brightness of experience, and or sometimes I call it the sense of I am experiencing this kind of, it's happening to me.
Yes.
All experience I'm having, moment by moment, is happening to me.
Yes. Yes.
Unquestionably.
Right.
It's unquestionable.
Right.
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 So it's so matter of course. People take it for granted. But sometimes I notice this bare fact, and sometimes I can chill a little bit, kind of shock.
Yes.
This happened to me.
Okay, I will stop here and invite you to write down for a minute. Did you learn anything new about yourself or about your experience from Fujita-san? Okay, the second clip I would like to share with you is from an interview I did with a friend of mine in Israel by the name of Anat. There is something constant, stable, and ever present in my experience.
I think the word ever present is the stronger for me. And I realize maybe the older I get, but maybe it's not the older I get because I had that always, I think, since I was a little girl, the feeling that myself as I am is not the whole story of my life, is not the whole story of myself. Myself as I see is not just, it's not only what I am. And that I have a part which is a story, which is my story. I was born, I have my parents, I have my brothers, I have my school, I have my neighborhood, my friends, the things that happen to me, the things that I like, what I eat, how I read, all this, how I travel, my story. And that's kind of a silhouette, I would say. It's a kind of a silhouette of myself, and it's ever-changing. It's an ever-changing silhouette. It's never static. It's always changing. It changes not only physically, it also changes emotionally. I change, my emotions change, my moods change, my memories, my inclinations, the way I look at things, they change. They're not constant. And still, in all this, there is something ever present or constant or stable, which is me, which is me. I can't say, I used to say it's bigger than me. But no, it's me as I am.
Okay. Okay. The next one is from a Zoom interview I did with a fellow in Connecticut. And his name is Marshall Davis. And he used to be a Christian monk and then a pastor for about 40 years. And then 12 or 13 years ago, he underwent an event of unity of consciousness and became established in that perspective ever since. So let me see. So the first few statements are about experience. There is something stable, constant, and ever present in my experience.
Yes, that is definitely true. And it was very different than before this spiritual shift happened for me in 2012. Before then, I did have all sorts of spiritual experiences that you were talking about, and some very powerful, so powerful that I had to kind of step away from it for a while. But in 2012, there was something very different that happened. I would not even call it an experience, really. I would simply call it a shift in perspective and a backing up into what was deeper and than any experience, but in which all experiences happened. It was seeing from a different different place, if you will, but it's it's not a place. It is it's all places. It's seeing it's seeing it. Everything's happening, including all experiences within this, and this has continued ever since that summer of 2012. So it's going on 14 years now. It My understanding and my articulation of it has changed over that time, but what this is has not changed because it cannot change because it's not subject to me. It's even though me, as far as this individual self, can perceive it differently and can articulate it differently. Still, this reality, this bigger reality, that's bigger than me, which is my true identity, I would say, remains constant.
Is it more of a knowing, a noetic quality, or more of a feeling, quality, affective quality?
I think those can be expressions of it, but that's not what it is. It is a sense of boundlessness and spaciousness and inclusiveness. And that brings with it, it can produce certain emotions and thoughts and feelings and all that stuff. But those are really incidental. Those are simply the effects within my body and personality, rather than characteristics of this, ultimate reality, I would say.
So does that reality have any characteristics?
I would say not. That is, it is defined by what it's not, rather than what it is. As soon as you try to say something it is, it instantly falsifies it. It instantly points away from it. As soon as you try to pin it down, it won't. It won't be pinned down. So
So I'm rushing through these because I'm really interested in having some time to explore with you how these can be used in a different educational contexts. So moving on to a Jewish rabbi that I interviewed in Israel. Again, it's the same. These are all on the first statement of the interview. His name is Dov Zinger.
האמירות האלה יכול להיות שהן מתאימות לחוויה שלך כמו שהיא עכשיו, ויכול להיות שהן מתאימות לאיזה אירועים או חוויות שעברת בחיים, שהיו לך פעם. אז אני מזמין אותך להתייחס לכל אמירה איך שנראה לך, כן? יש משהו יציב, מתמשך ונוכח תמיד בחוויה שלי.
כן, אבל הוא מאוד קטן, זאת אומרת, הוא איזה מרכז מאוד מאוד מסוים, אבל מסביבו יש כל הזמן שערות, זאת אומרת, זה לא שזו החוויה הבסיסית על פני כל הדרך. אני אומר הברכה שאני הכי אוהב לברך אותה בבוקר, יש בברכות השחר הרבה ברכות, הברכה היא ברוך אתה השם אלוקינו מלך העולם ורוקה הארץ על המים. שכאילו התחושה שיש מים מתחת לכל, יש איזה נס כזה שמישהו רקע את הארץ על המים. אנחנו הולכים על הארץ, אבל זוכרים שמתחת לארץ הכל מים בעצם. אז הברכה מאוד מפרנסת אותי, מעשירה אותי.
כן. אני רוצה לשאול אותך עוד קצת על המים.
כן.
יש למשהו העדין הזה, יש איכויות מסוימות?
קודם כל יש פסוק שאומר כי אני ידעתי, כאילו זאת אומרת אני ידעתי כשם הוא אלוהים, אז זה בתוכי כאילו מאוד מאוד חזק, זה חוויה פנימית מאוד מאוד חזקה, שאני יודע משהו, אבל שוב, זה תמיד מופיע עם זה שאת הרוב אני לא יודע.
כן.
זאת אומרת, יש איזו ידיעה מאוד מאוד ברורה, שאני יכול לראות במה היא מתלבשת, אני יכול לצייר אותה, אבל זו ידיעה מאוד מאוד חזקה, שמכוונת אותי כמו איזה כוונת לייזר כזאת, זאת אומרת שהיא מאוד מאוד דקה.
כן.
שוב, תמיד היא מופיעה על רקע הסערה מסביב.
כן, כן. ההרגשה שלך היא שאתה מודע לזה כל הזמן?
כל הזמן זה יומרני, זאת אומרת, אבל זה נוכח, זאת אומרת, זה לא משהו שאני צריך לעשות מאמץ בשבילו.
כן.
זאת אומרת, זה משהו שהוא... כמו שאתה נוהג, כאילו, אז אתה יודע איך לנהוג, זה לא משהו שאתה צריך, כאילו, להיות בערנות מטורפת, כאילו.
כן.
הייתי צריך להיות במטוס, זה נראה לי יותר, כרגע יותר...
כן.
אבל כאילו יש איזו ידיעה שלוקחת אותי, כן.
ויש לה איזה שהן איכויות, נקרא להן רגשיות?
לא יודע אם זה עונה על השאלה, אז תוכל לכוון אותי יותר, אבל זה סוג של אינטימיות, כאילו. זה חוויה אינטימית, זאת אומרת שכאילו משהו... בפנים, חם, אהוב.
Okay, I'm going to skip Naveen, an Indian man, and because I actually want us to have like 15 minutes to talk. And this is a Zoom interview I did only like 2 weeks ago or so, while I was already in Japan, with Parker Palmer, that some of you probably know or know of. There is something constant, stable, and ever-present in my experience.
Well, I can affirm that for myself. I think the important qualifier that I need to put on that statement for me is that in those times when it seems as if that constant thing has gone or has abandoned me or isn't available to me, I've learned that it's really my absence that is the problem, not the absence of that constancy. And so I think one of the benefits of age for me, I'm now 86, has been to learn that lesson, and to learn that something is interfering with my attentiveness to that constant element in my life, that ground of being. And my job is to return to attentiveness. So I no longer feel I've been abandoned, which is a desperate feeling, which I know from my younger years. But I have a feeling that's much more actionable, which is I've lost my focus. How can I get it back?
Right. Can you say something about, can you describe in some way or characterize that which is constant?
I think a word like grace comes close to naming that which is constant for me. It's not so much a thing as it is. It's not a noun so much as it is a verb, a sense that there is a life process, maybe a bit in the way that Taoists describe the stream of life, the river of life, the Tao as a flowing river, a process that holds me up and sustains me and is constantly flowing, whether I am in close touch with that fact or not.
And the last clip is from an interview I did with a young woman. Somehow it didn't occur to me that that we could all learn something from younger people. So until about 2 months ago, I interviewed only people, I think my youngest interviewees were in their 40s. And then it occurred to me, maybe I should try to interview some younger people in their, teens and or 20s. And so I asked my wife, who is a vocal coach and has many young students, to recommend a couple of her students that she thought were could be good interviewees. And this is with one of them.
I know myself to be more than my body, personality, and biography.
I believe myself to be more. No is a strong word for it, but I believe myself to be more than that. And I mean, that question brings very strongly to mind the idea of a soul, of religion, of something existing under the surface.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about, this is not scientific, or it's not even philosophical, what we're exploring. So it's basically about your intuition,
right,
of yourself and of world. So if you are more than your body, personality, and biography, what would that more be?
The last time I thought about something like this was, I was thinking about like what things motivate me, what my goals are, what I want, what are my beliefs. I was just thinking about that, and this idea kind of came into my head, very vague idea that had something to do with oneness and like being one with the world, with God, with everything kind of being one, but still like, it's everything. So therefore it's a lot of things, like this kind of feeling of, I don't know how to describe it beyond oneness. And I think I have had that experience in the past where I feel some sort of vague sense of oneness. And I think a part of me subconsciously is constantly searching for that and to return to that. And I think that oneness is similar to the stillness and the peace, in that I think that's part of the positive feelings that brings me when I do take a moment to. And it was frustrating because it was really hard for me to remember, and I still don't remember specific times that I felt that way, but there's memory of that feeling and kind of seeking that feeling of oneness. I think I kind of lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going with that.
So
So I'd say that oneness is an aspect of this thing that I give the name of soul, and that is this thing that is beyond just my body, But it does have a lot to do. I'm only realizing now that my conception of it has a lot to do with other people in the world around me. When you would think that it would be very individual. Yeah.
This is powerful. This is powerful stuff.
I would love to hear, we have 10 minutes, 9 minutes. I would love to hear how you experience the process, whether you feel, well, really the question that I wanted to explore with you, I have no doubt, also because I tried, that it works, this kind of this kind of approach or exploration works well for students. But I don't know if it would work well for teenagers or elementary school children. And some people that I asked thought that it wouldn't, and some people thought, yes, definitely it should be, this kind of statements should be presented to to teenagers or even younger kids. So I don't have much experience working with children, or I don't have any experience working with children. So I'm curious to know what your take is on that.
Amir, I am so impressed by your work, and I've told you that before, but I am just, I was really looking forward to this hour to spend with you and watch your videos and reflect with my friends here, just to try to stay focused in our short time on the question of young people. I guess one first thought I have is that having spent a lot of time with young people, human development through childhood and adolescence, one could say, one could describe as a process of transformation that sometimes looks like moving from the scatteredness of infant perception, the trying to organize the multitude of stimuli into something coherent, into a coherence, as one is self-organizing and creating themselves. And I think for that reason, I think these questions could be very challenging to many young people.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be doing with them. That's what we should be engaging them with, in part, is guiding and challenging them to seek that center, that oneness, that boundlessness, that, all these ways, the beautiful expressions that your interviewees had to describe it. And I think anyone who has worked with young people a lot of young people will be able to express in one way or another those sort of rare encounters that we have with a young person who we would describe as an old soul, And I think that is what we're trying to describe in that phrase, that there are sometimes those people who just have a presence and an awareness and an intuition about the constancy, the what is constant. And then they're not as flitty,
Yes.
So that's my first thought anyway.
So I have two questions based on what you just said. One is, if we start introducing such an exploration or contemplation, at what age would you start? And the second is, I agree with you that for some young, for some children, and I was one of them, I started exploring such questions when I was 16. So I would have loved to run into such a project when I was 16. But I had about 150 kids in my same year in my high school. And I think I found about 2 or 3 people I could talk with on these questions. So what about the remaining, 95%? What is it appropriate to introduce to them such an exploration, or would it be too confusing, or maybe even cause them to reject the exploration altogether?
I think Andrea and Cam might have something to say. Just because I know, Andrea teaches yoga with young kids, right? And also other forms of mindfulness and reflection. I don't know if you want to.
Mine first. Yeah, I think probably a little of both. I think you'd have some that would reject the inquiry and others that might be able to step into it. Definitely from watching those interviews, something about the age, and I think having repetitive, the repetition of these experiences seems to maybe settle it more deeply in the individual. Like, you know, even in that girl, right? It was there, you know, could feel her like getting in contact with it. But then with some of the others, it's like there's a confidence of contact with it. And you know, that confidence, it's like, you know, that's what I hope my elders to be, you know, is to have that kind of confidence in that contact. But yeah, that's just my initial inclination.
Yeah, I really appreciate the questions, the statements, and realizing that just by bringing this topic up, how deeply it brings me to think about these things that most of my day I'm not at least aware of.
Sure.
And thinking about, well, yes, how can we do that for children? So how can we bring this awareness to children? Maybe it's by these types of direct questions, but are there other modes of exposing children to experiences of feeling like they have an opportunity to connect to nature or to other individuals, and then refining the questions to their age. And it can be something very, very simple. And I think it can start very early. I don't know a specific age, but I think it also depends on different children. But I think it can start very early that children have these innate senses, whether or not they're going to be able to verbalize them. Maybe it comes through a picture. Maybe it comes through just the way that one of our students waves goodbye to this giant like grub looking thing that we found in the garden, digging a hole, and he had a deep connection to this other living thing that other people were kind of grossed out by. And I think as educators, can we refine our own ability to start to see these moments in our students where they may not even realize it, but it's naturally starting to develop in them. And maybe there's ways of us just helping them see that for themselves. And sometimes just finding the right question seems really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I think we're pretty much at the end of the hour. So if anybody else has any responses or.
Am I audible?
Yes, we gotcha.
There are questions that we don't ask kids. One question is, what would you like to learn about? Some kids never have that put to them until very late in their maybe in high school. What do you mean? What do I want to learn about? You're the teacher, tell me. But these kind of questions too, I think, should be um, presented to kids, maybe not with the intent that they answer, but that they just hear the question.
Right.
And then I don't know how it would be configured, but if they were to hear older children or children their own age answering the questions, then they would understand, oh, these are questions that I can contemplate too. And maybe I do have, because that's where I am now. I wish I had had this years ago, because that's what collectively it shows me that these are questions that I can grapple with. Maybe I can't pin them down right now, but maybe something will come to me. And it's already been said that it was powerful stuff, and I agree.
So Cheryl, this is really interesting because I don't think it's my project because but if somebody, for example, did short interviews with 100 children, asking them, for example, the question, what would you like to learn about? And then made a compilation of, let's say, 20 responses, that would really, such short clips would really be a facilitator for other children to reflect on the same question. So it wouldn't be so, what are you asking me? I have no idea, which may be a common first response. But once they hear 20 other children responding from different angles or shedding light on different possibilities, maybe they would have a response, and maybe that would really help them pave their own path in the learning process. So that could be a fantastic project, not mine, but somebody's.
I think I knew one educator 10 years ago who was engaged with a project I think he just called the Listening Project. And it was essentially that, that let's get together with kids. Let's facilitate ways in which they can individually and in collaboration share what's most important to them. And let's listen and let's document what's said, and let's play the role of recorders and amplifiers and validators, and just listen well, deeply, what else was I going to say? I was reminded that like someone like Rudolf Steiner would, I think, didn't know him, but I think would warn us against giving kids, young children in particular, too much expectation or the challenge of putting into words things that are in their consciousness. And I think he, for example, wouldn't introduce letters to children under age 7 because just the symbolic idea he felt would corrupt their spiritual unfolding. So I think if we're looking to draw wisdom, which I think is innate and developmentally available for kids at very young ages, I think maybe we look to other than verbal, intellectual, logical expressions, and that maybe a very skilled educator finds ways of drawing through artwork and movement and play and time in nature and breathing, windows into the wisdom that is innate, yeah.
Great. My brother is a Waldorf teacher, so I'll discuss that with him. I'm curious to know what he would say.
Yeah. I'm so glad, by the way, that you found your way to Parker Palmer. I'm sure when you asked me, Amir, like 7 years ago or whenever it was,
Yes.
like spiritual exemplar, I'm sure he was number 1 on my list.
Yes,
And
he
he is
was.
a difficult man to connect with. And I have talked to him a couple times myself, but I'm so glad, and he looks good. I'm so glad.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I'm still hoping to get to meet him in person. So far, I've only had Zoom interviews with him. Yeah, that would be remarkable, really.
Yeah,
Able to.
I have a good friend who's a friend of his and goes in Madison, Wisconsin, where I assume he still is, and shares
Yes.
Christmas parties with him and stuff. So I can maybe connect you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you for these precious gifts of these interviews and these recordings. They are really something special, and for this gift of having us reflect as well. It's
Thank you very
like
much.
has been said, it's powerful stuff. So.
Yes.
I have one more question. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Do you know have you met Four Arrows, dear friend, Four Arrows?
I interviewed him. Actually, it was one of the funniest interviews I had because he was 10 minutes late and then he came without his shirt on and said, "Sorry, I was surfing. I forgot about the interview."
Yes, that doesn't surprise me at all. I ask because his work in part draws such a distinction between indigenous worldview and every other worldview, which he would describe as colonizer or whatever, oppressor worldview. And I just think I love seeing the rabbis and the, pastors and people from Western traditions who have been, acculturated to Western contemporary ways of thinking and knowing that seem to be deeply seeing the world through, I think, what 4 Hours would call an indigenous worldview. And I would love for him to try to engage with that question.
Well, I think that there is a potential in this project of bringing people from different cultures and traditions together, because it touches these statements touch on essences that are pre-language and pre-conceptual framework, and people can connect to the same essence through somebody else's language and metaphors and ways of expression.
Right, right. In a way, I don't know, somehow it's heartening to me to be reminded that, even if one isn't immersed in an indigenous culture per se, one still has access to those kinds of feelings of connection, connectedness, oneness. And, maybe it's harder work. It requires a little more reflection or, I don't know, intentionality, but yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.